Hello and welcome to Feel Real Depth. This is a space for those that love to not only watch films, but to feel them. For those who understand that yes, these characters are their own individuals with their own stories, and yet we can see so many people we know in them, including ourselves. I believe these stories can be used as a bridge to better understand ourselves and others, and I'm here to share that by expressing my love and passion for film. Welcome in, and I hope you enjoy. Please be sure to give it a thumbs up if you do, as that helps the channel, and feel free to comment below your own opinion, perception, or even similarities you feel to characters in the film, because at the end of the day, I'm just sharing my own. So without further ado, let's get into it. Today we are looking at the 1994 classic, 30 Years is Wild, but 1994 classic Forrest Gump, who is played by Tom Hanks. This movie is based on the 1986 novel by Winston Groom, which, just to let it be known, I will not be referring to at any point. Now first, I must briefly talk about why I chose to make a video on this film. If you don't care and just want to get to the commentary, it's all good, no harm done. Go ahead and skip to this time below, and if you're sticking around, thank you. Basically, I've just loved movies for as long as I can remember, and Forrest Gump has been one of my favorite movies for as long as I can remember. I saw it for the first time when I was about 8 or 9, and I just remember being so enthralled by the story. I was just so captivated by the raw display of life presented in the film. I remember feeling such a connection to Jenny's character and loving her cover of Blowin' in the Wind, and just all the series of events that followed in my life after that. Me looking up the song on YouTube and discovering Bob Dylan, and through him discovering more 60s music, and through that becoming completely captivated by the hippie movement and culture in general. So there's this nostalgic, heartwarming factor I have for the film, but also now my adult self can even better understand these characters and situations even deeper because of my own life experiences. But let's be real, this is an incredibly vast film. It is stories upon stories all wrapped into one. So today we are focusing specifically on the story of Forrest and Jenny. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the film as a whole, but to this day, the story of Forrest and Jenny are still the most compelling part of the film for me, personally. And with a film as wide and wavering as Forrest Gump, I really want to hone in on what moved me the most, Forrest and Jenny's upbringing, how their bond stuck throughout their lives, and I want to make some solid points within that. So that's what I'll be doing. So, who is Forrest Gump? The film opens up with us meeting Forrest at a bus stop. He seems fascinated by a white feather that lands at his feet, so much so that he picks it up and places it in his briefcase. A lady gets off the bus, joins him on the bench, and we are immediately introduced to him through her. Forrest introduces himself, offers her chocolate, and is clearly trying to strike up a conversation. Sis is clearly not for it today. It's one of them days. I mean, majority of the time he's talking, she's not even looking at him, okay? But Forrest just carries on speaking, and he says something that even just for a second captures the lady's attention.
Mom always said there's an awful lot you can tell about a person by their shoes. Where they going, where they been.
And through this deep memory that he's having, we are now being fully allowed into the life story of Forrest Gump.
I bet if I think about it real hard, I could remember my first pair of shoes.
We learn that Forrest grew up in the state of Alabama. As a kid, he struggled academically, he wore braces on his legs, and just very much stood out. All the while being raised by his mother, who is blessed to live on family land and earns her income by renting out rooms in their huge home. Now, Forrest's mother immediately comes across as a true mama bear. I mean, not even 10 minutes into the film, we see her uplifting him, feeding affirmations into him, constantly reassuring him that even if the world is telling him he's off or slow or different, he is just as capable as anybody else to achieve anything he strives for. Now, as far as Forrest's father, It seems he may have been in his life at some point, but this also seems open for interpretation. Once again, I'm going strictly off what the film is presenting and not anything that may be in the novel. So with this, Forrest recalls a memory of his mother trying to enroll him into public school. His IQ was just 5 points below the required level to attend public school, and Mrs. Gump was not having it. She was very adamant about her son receiving the best and most stimulating education possible. The principal asks if there is a Mr. Gump, to which she replies that he's on vacation. And well, sis handled it how she saw fit, I guess. She sleeps with the principal in her house while Forrest sits and hears all of this from outside. Now I'm not gonna lie, the sound of his moans paired with this shot is super eerie to me. I love the frame immediately right before, but this one is just so awkward and almost dark given the situation. Of course, I get how it can be humorous, but I can't help but wonder, what is Forrest thinking in this moment? I feel like we have to mention how the principal and Mrs. Gump finish up, and after seeing Forrest on the porch, he lets out a semi-icky statement.
Your mama sure does care about your schooling, son.
And actually attempts to strike up a conversation as he's preparing to leave.
You don't say much, do you?
Forrest was not feeling that whatsoever, and instead mocks the principal by imitating his loud moans, and the pissed off man storms away. That night, Forrest's mother is reading Curious George to him, most likely the same one seen in his briefcase at the beginning. And Forrest just outright asks her, what does the word vacation mean? And she replies that vacation is when you go somewhere and you never come back. Now why she chose to reveal the news to Forrest like that, I can't say, because first off, I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know if maybe he passed away when Forrest was a little younger. I don't know if he just up and left one day. What I do know is that she was clearly thrown off by the unexpected question. She really gave off this energy of just wanting to let it be known and move on, not really wanting to get into detail about it. But either way, that meant that Forrest's father was no longer around. Now, Forrest and Jenny's story starts with the bus ride on the first day of school. Majority of the kids judged Forrest, not allowing him to sit next to them, and he was genuinely preparing to stand up for the rest of the ride. But according to him, he suddenly hears the sweetest voice in the wide world. Little Jenny invites him to sit down, and they carry on a conversation all the way to school. The two are pretty much inseparable, or as Forrest calls it, like peas and carrots, always teaching each other different things, and just enjoying being kids, having fun playing outside. Jenny even plays a part in a pivotal moment in Forrest's life, when he outgrows his leg braces. It seems that the two are walking home one day when some bullies appear and start throwing rocks straight at Forrest's face. Jenny helps him up and tells Forrest to run away, and he tries to the best of his ability but is not very fast due to his leg braces. And the bullies are zooming on their bikes on Forrest's tail, when suddenly he looks down and notices that his braces are flying off his legs. I absolutely love that side view, almost Olympic style shot of him speeding up. I mean, I just love this scene in general. It's classic, iconic, but there's just such great messaging here. It's such a great example of how people will put so much energy and effort into tearing you down, wanting to make you feel small, all the while really just playing a role in your growth. Like, come on, they took the time out of their day to plan to confront Forrest, and were pissed when they couldn't catch him. And he just took all that energy and made it work in his favor. We don't have to get into specifics, but if you've ever experienced a moment in your life where others were trying so hard to pull you down, and all you did was rise even higher from it, feel free to comment below. Stories like that matter and clearly deserve to be shared. Because no, those weapons clearly did not prosper, but oh, did this turn out prosperous for Forrest. And in his words, from that day on, if he was going somewhere, he was running. Now, hanging out with Jenny all the time, it didn't take Forrest long to notice that often she would want to stay outside a little later than usual. And one day, Jenny doesn't show up for school, so Forrest goes to check on her. And here, by his narration, is when we learn some of Jenny's upbringing. Her mother passed away when she was 5 years old, leaving her and her sisters in the care of their father, who Forrest describes as a very loving man, always kissing and touching his daughters. As Forrest is looking around, he spots Jenny in the backyard. He asks her why she didn't attend school today, to which she tells him to speak more quietly, because her father is napping. Before anything else could be said, her father is seen storming out of the house, liquor bottle in hand, yelling out for Jenny.
Jenny! Where'd you run to?
She grabs Forrest's hand and together they run into a field. They reach a pretty deep part within and Jenny kneels, begging Forrest to pray with her. Now, it doesn't take too many context clues to realize that Jenny's father may not be the greatest man. From Forrest's account, it's unfortunately safe to say that Jenny's father most likely behaves inappropriately with his daughters, as well as having an alcohol issue on top of that.
Dear God, make me a bird so I can fly far, far, far away from here.
The shot of the white birds flying away has such a beauty and yet sadness to it. I really feel for little Jenny in this moment. I can't say I've experienced exactly what she has, but I know what it's like to be a young girl that feels stuck and praying to be elsewhere, externally and internally. Now, I'm going to be very open for a moment, because this isn't a recap, this is a commentary. And God may be a touchy subject for some, but isn't for me. I don't belong to any religion, but I am a believer of God, of a higher source. Personally, I believe God has no borders, no limits. In my eyes, God can be referred to as a he, a she, the almighty, the divine. At the end of the day, it is a pure and powerful source that never runs dry. And I believe everyone finds the path that works and feels most aligned for them, religion or not. And I'm absolutely fascinated by the moments of God, heaven, and even hell being mentioned and portrayed throughout this film. I'm a believer that God can shine through every single one of us in different ways, and the character of Forrest Gump is a phenomenal example of that. So, moving on, we see that Jenny's prayer and faith did in fact prevail, and she is sent to live with her grandmother. We don't know exactly how it happened, but as famously said, sometimes the how just isn't as important as the why. I do wonder what happened to her sisters though, because they're mentioned once and then never again. Nevertheless, Forrest and Jenny are absolutely thrilled about the move, especially because they live even closer to each other now. And some nights, Jenny even comes over to his house and they sleep in Forrest's bed together, highlighting just how special and pure their bond really is. And that bond follows them all the way through high school. Their next scene together is history repeating itself. They're walking home, minding the business that pays them. And we have our infamous bullies who have traded in their bikes for a Confederate flag flaunting truck and are still chasing Forrest down, throwing rocks at him, and deriving pleasure from causing chaos. On cue, Jenny tells Forrest to run, and he absolutely books it. But once again, the scales turn in his favor, because as these miserable kids are chasing Forrest down, he ends up running through a football field during their practice. Forrest notes that he ran around town because that's just what he did, never thinking it would take him anywhere. And this is such a great example of how just naturally doing what you love to do, even in hectic situations, can place you right where you need to be. So, Forrest catches the eyes of the coaches and ends up having a phenomenal run playing football in college. Not outright said, but most likely having earned a scholarship. And all throughout this time, there are several comments from different coaches calling him stupid.
That's the local idiot.
He must be the stupidest son of a bitch alive, but he sure is fast.
Even from that quick scene during the game, it seems that Forrest doesn't really understand the play-by-play rules and dynamics of the sport, nor does he seem to really care. He likes to run, he does it when it's requested, and that's that. Surely he knows what people think of him. It seems there was no escaping it in his childhood. But he never lets that stop him from doing what he strives for. And it's in these moments, I'm sure, his mother's constant affirmations as a child definitely helped build up his strong character. Now, as I stated earlier, Forrest went on to play college ball. So the next time that we see him and Jenny together is in their journey through college. Jenny attends an all-girls school, but that doesn't stop their bond from remaining strong, as Forrest visits her whenever he can. One rainy night, he's toting some chocolates, waiting for her outside of her dorm, when a car pulls up. Now, let's say to most, it's pretty obvious that Jenny has a little boo thing that she's making out or getting it on with. However, the way the situation looks for just a moment has Forrest believing something may be happening against Jenny's will. And he quickly intervenes. First off, we see that this is not the same little Forrest that was running from bullies. When it comes to Miss Jenny, he is about it, and he will do whatever he has to protect her. But unfortunately, good intention, wrong place and time. Jenny is just a growing girl in college, dating and exploring romantic interests. But before Forrest can really grasp that, he is already whipping the car door open and going to town beating on this guy. Jenny runs out of the car, yelling at Forrest to stop, furiously explaining that this young man is in fact not hurting her. She tries to apologize to said young man, aka Billy, claiming that Forrest doesn't know any better. But Billy is clearly not for the drama. He hands Jenny her stuff and he is out of there. Now, this is our first time seeing Jenny visibly upset with Forrest, and it makes sense. As I stated earlier, she is a growing young lady in college, and to have one of her romantic rendezvous interrupted is probably going to leave her a little frustrated. However, we see that pure love she has for Forrest is still there, because even though she's clearly pissed, she still invites him back to her dorm to hang out. Her initial upset starts to melt away as they make their way in and dry off. She asks Forrest about his dreams for himself, and when he doesn't understand the question, she shares her own. Her dream of fame, of singing and playing guitar on stage, of expressing herself and being heard just as she is, and reaching people in doing that. And although she's talking very openly and vulnerably, she's also undressing as she speaks. And since it hasn't been mentioned up until this point, it's safe to say this is the closest Forrest has been to a half-naked young lady. And being a healthy young man, he can't help but to stare. Even as Jenny is in deep thought, she can feel his eyes on her. And so she asks Forrest if he's ever been with a girl. Forrest stares at her bra, while replying that he sits next to girls in home ec all the time, still showing such a level of purity and innocence. But sensing his curiosity, Jenny decides to unfasten her bra and show Forrest her breasts. She places his hand on one, and when Forrest finally looks over, he is incredibly overwhelmed. This moment has clearly woken up feelings he has never felt before, and he apologizes and looks away. Jenny is incredibly delicate in the way she handles the situation, reassuring him that it's alright as she quickly puts her bra back on. Now, her intention with exposing herself to Forrest could definitely be open to interpretation. Maybe she saw how curious Forrest was, and feeling so safe with him, just wanted to give him that experience. Maybe she found something special in being the first lady he had that experience with. Maybe she was just plain curious in how he would respond. Nevertheless, they don't let the moment ruin their night. She embraces Forrest, making a joke on how she bets nothing like that ever happened in home ec. And the two laugh, she gives him a friendly kiss on the cheek, and they brush it under the rug. The scene closes with Forrest realizing he may have gotten a little something on her roommate's bathrobe, to which Jenny replies she doesn't care, because she doesn't like the girl anyway. All the while, the roommate has been awake the entire time, probably wondering who is this dude and where is this going. Now, after graduating college, Forrest goes on to enlist in the Army. He meets a great companion, Bubba, and seems to take to the Army pretty effortlessly. He's chilling in his bunk one night when one of the guys throws over a Playboy magazine. Forrest grabs it, turns the page, and sees none other than Jenny, posing in her college sweater. and according to him, she actually received quite the backlash for posing in her sweater and was kicked out of school. Pause. Now, I'll admit, I don't really get the demure meme. Honestly, half the memes today, especially on TikTok, I don't really understand. But hey, whatever makes the kids happy. But while I was reading this article, I did notice that demure was mentioned. So hey, there's that. But also, according to Forrest, this wasn't a bad thing, because Jenny's pictures were spotted and she was offered a singing gig. And of course, the supportive friend that Forrest is, he makes a bus to Memphis to see her as soon as he can. We see him enter the theater, as he calls it, and he spots Jenny's picture on the display for that night's performers. Now, once the camera pans over to the stage, it becomes very clear that this is not your typical singing showcase. This is a strip club. Now, I'm not here to judge. Everyone has their own opinions of strip clubs and exotic dancers, to each their own. What I find so interesting is how Forrest doesn't even seem to take that information in. In that moment, the curtain opens and Jenny is there, singing and playing the guitar, sitting on a stool, wearing nothing but underwear, looking and sounding beautiful. In that moment, he just sees his friend, whose dorm he sat in and listened to her dream of singing and performing on stage. And he's looking at her with such admiration. It's truly such a pure and fascinating moment. Now, unfortunately, we're swiftly brought back into the raw, dense 3D reality of it all. The reality that this is a strip club. And while her singing and her setup is beautiful, these are drunk and rowdy men at the front row that just want to see her naked body. Jenny's not even a minute into the song and they're already cracking jokes and essentially yelling at her to make it more exciting. Point blank, they're not here to watch Jenny sit down and sing. And things really take a turn when a man tries to slide some money towards Jenny's leg. And yes, she does kick him, which just flat out angers him. He grabs his drink and throws it at Jenny, angering her and pretty much ending the performance. She yells for the MC of the club to come out, but clearly he taking too long, cause ride or die Forrest is already making his way over. He approaches the guys and starts laying them left and right, which doesn't seem to take too much effort cause they're noticeably drunk. But Jenny now realizes that Forrest has unexpectedly shown up to watch her perform, and she seems pretty shocked that he's there. That wears off pretty quickly, however, because when Forrest tries to carry her off the stage, she gets upset and fights to release herself from his hold. The two leave the club and Jenny is pissed. She voices her frustration, expressing how Forrest can't keep swooping in and saving her all the time. Forrest responds how he can't help but to do it, because he loves her. To which she replies, he doesn't know what love is, and segues into remembering how they prayed together. Prayed for Jenny to be a bird that could fly away. The two are near a bridge, and as Jenny stands up on a higher part of it, she asks Forrest if he thinks she can fly off this very bridge they're standing on. This clearly makes Forrest tense, and he asks her what she means, to which she replies, love. I feel like this next part really breaks down the evening well. Jenny says she needs to get out of here, and is immediately able to hitch a ride, telling the driver she doesn't really care where she's going. She tells Forrest to stay away from her and is about to get into the truck when his announcement that he's going to Vietnam causes her to hesitate. Jenny reaches for him, telling him to promise that if he's ever in trouble, to not try and be brave, to just run. Forrest agrees and tells Jenny that he'll write to her all the time, to which she has no response. If one thing is for certain in this moment, is that Jenny is not well. She's been kicked out of college over a sexy photo and just doesn't know what's next. She's ready to be whisked away into something that feels better than where she is, but she doesn't quite know what she's looking for. And that's not always a terrible place to be, because that's a moment when you feel ready to cultivate something new into your life. But clearly she's not in the right headspace if she's asking questions about jumping off a bridge. There are several different points you could make off of this one scene. One being, we can only love others as deeply as we love ourselves. Now, of course, there's still room for nuance and subjectivity with a quote like that, but when it's apparent, it's apparent. Jenny seems to carry this level of frustration about Forrest showing up and rescuing her, when in his eyes, it's just showing care for someone you love deeply, romantic or platonic. Now granted, I think she was completely valid in being annoyed by Forrest disrupting her and her college boo. That truly was just an unfortunate misunderstanding, and she had the right to be upset. In this scenario, of course she still has the right to be upset, but the circumstances feel a little different. In Jenny's eyes, she doesn't want to be rescued. She wants to feel like she can fend for herself. Maybe she wants to be somewhere where no one knows her, where there are no ties to her past. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's that and more. Honestly, I think from Forrest's perspective, he was just watching his childhood friend live out what he was told was her dream, and saw that dream being tampered with by some drunken idiots, and in that moment, felt like defending his friend was the right thing to do. I'm not saying one perspective is better or right, I'm just saying there's more than one way to look at it, and Forrest and Jenny see the situation differently, as we humans tend to do. To Forrest, defending the ones he cares for seems to be a way he shows love. And that's not anything new. People stand up for their friends and family all the time. Maybe something about this makes Jenny uncomfortable, because for quite a few years, she was brought up in an unhealthy, distorted version of what love is. Maybe the feeling of pure, unconditional love is so unfamiliar, she's convinced it can't possibly be real. And even if it is, she's not worthy of it. We see that in how she immediately shuts down Forrest when he expresses his love for her.
You can't keep doing this all the time.
I can't help it. I love you.
You don't know what love is.
No, Forrest may not be as academically smart or sharp as the next person, but does that mean he's not capable of understanding love? Absolutely not. And she's definitely showing her own wounding by saying that. She doubles down on this very thing at the end of their conversation. She tells Forrest, when you're ever in any trouble, run away. She can only go as deep into their friendship and relationship as she's gone with herself. And right now, Jenny herself is running. Right now, she's drifting, soul-searching, looking outside of herself for answers, for proof that there's something out there, something better. And there's nothing wrong with that. But she's not ready to look into herself yet, not ready to face her past and really understand herself. And who hasn't been here? We all have our exploration of the world, and that's just the path that she's on right now. And in some ways, life itself is constant exploration. And these two precious kids that were like peas and carrots, they're growing up. Forrest is a young man enlisting in the army because that's what he feels called to do. Jenny is a young lady that grew up with no parental guidance, no parental support, and is just trying to figure out who she is and where she's going. Now, in essence, telling someone to run away from any trouble at all could definitely seem like bad advice, right? Unless you're Michael Jackson telling someone to beat it, because yeah, depending on the situation, sometimes it just ain't worth it. But in these particular cases, telling your friend that's being bullied to just run away, telling that same friend that's literally going into war to just run away. Very interesting. But what I love is that they make a point to show that when Forrest does follow that philosophy, he comes out on top. We saw him run away from those bullies as a kid and broke those leg braces off and had tremendous speed on top of that. We saw him run away from bullies as a teenager, going on to be noticed by football coaches and ending up with a whole scholarship. And even in combat, he hears his own people there, Bubba and Lieutenant Dan, tell him to do just what Jenny told him. And with that, not only saved his life, but several other soldiers in his platoon. Unfortunately though, in the midst of saving these men, Forrest is shot in the butt. While being treated, he finally gets access to all the letters that have been sent to him during his service, majority being from his good pal Jenny. We don't get to read them with him, but it's still nice to see that she was taking the time to write those letters and maintain their bond. Now, due to Forrest's exceptional bravery in the war, he's awarded a Medal of Honor given by the President. And with that, finds himself in Washington, D.C. He's enjoying his downtime, doing some sightseeing, when he's unknowingly pulled into being a spokesperson for a protest against the war. He's brought on stage and asked to tell the first-hand experience of a soldier. And just when he's about to spill the tea, we see a man quickly unplugging all the cords for the microphones. All of what Forrest has said has gone unheard, and that's unfortunate. But a nice little
Message.
because when you come forth with too much honesty and are a little too real, there's always somebody trying to shut you up. There's an awkward silence after no one heard anything he said, but the man next to him asks him to speak his name into the mic. Not too long after he says his name, we hear a woman yelling off in the distance. And of course, that woman is Jenny. She runs straight through the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool, at least that's what Wikipedia tells me it's called, and Forrest does the same. This is a true magical movie moment as the two reunite in this beautiful moment of peace. And according to Forrest, the two reconnect with great ease, like peas and carrots once again. They walk around catching up, and Jenny brings Forrest to meet the current people in her life. And with that, finds himself in a room with members of the political group, the Black Panthers, who are clearly less than thrilled for Forrest to be there. Forrest is then introduced to Wesley, Jenny's boyfriend, who immediately does not like him, seeing that Forrest is a veteran. Wesley aggressively pulls Jenny off to the side so they can talk privately, and one of the Black Panther members comes back over to Forrest and starts drilling into him on exactly why they are against the very war Forrest has just fought in. Now, Forrest is kinda listening, but he's really watching Jenny and Wesley like a hawk because they are clearly having a disagreement. Out of absolutely nowhere, Jenny is slapped. And as we've learned, Forrest don't play that. Forget saying he goes to town whooping this guy. No, he just starts beating the out of this dude. This is a situation where there is no confusion, no misunderstanding. A man has put his hands on Jenny, and Forrest is not having it. Wesley tries to play it off, make it seem like this is Forrest and Jenny's fault, just looking for someone else to blame for his behavior. But Forrest stands in his truth, claiming that that man should not be hitting Jenny. A Black Panther member opens the door, insinuating that it's time to go. And Forrest turns around one last time, apologizing for ruining their party. Forrest and Jenny are then seen going for a walk near the White House to clear the air. Jenny starts their conversation off by defending Wesley, claiming that he doesn't mean it when he hits her, which, we don't really need to dig much there, do we? Perks of being a wallflower, anyone? We accept the love we think we deserve. But here we're seeing a much more confident and bolder Forrest. He states how he would never hurt Jenny, and she replies that she knows. He voices how he wanted to be her boyfriend, to which she's not ready to go that deep yet, so she gives him no response. She does, however, follow up this silence with a compliment, letting Forrest know just how handsome he looks in his uniform. They continue their walk, and through it we are caught up with what's been going on in Jenny's life. She has been living the full-on, nomadic, soul-searching hippie lifestyle, hitchhiking all over the country, and just exploring that more non-traditional life. The two stay up the entire night reconnecting, and in the morning find their way to a travel bus stop. Jenny is getting ready to go back to California, and unfortunately, with Wesley. He approaches as Jenny and Forrest are standing near the bus. He immediately tries to justify his actions, blaming his frustrations on the war and the president as to why he hit her, claiming that he would never hurt Jenny, which is a contradicting statement within itself.
I would never hurt you. You know that.
Forrest is absolutely over this guy. He talks to Jenny while simultaneously yelling at Wesley.
I think you should go home to Greenbow, Alabama!
And yeah, Wesley don't want that smoke. No mas. And so he slowly backs up towards the bus. Jenny turns back towards Forrest and states that her and Forrest just have two different lives. Forrest responds by taking off his Medal of Honor and giving it to Jenny. She tries to refuse, but he insists, doubling down on the point made earlier, that he got it just doing what she told him to do. She asks Forrest why he's so good to her, which in itself is a bit of a sad question to ask. But this is once again followed up by a sweet moment, keeping their pure bond alive.
Why are you so good to me?
You're my girl.
I'll always be your girl.
So let's review where they are since we last saw the two together. Forrest has went off to serve in the war and is being recognized as a hero for saving so many in his platoon. Now, of course, do what you will with him being recognized as a hero. I think saving so many people by just having the bravery to keep going back in there is definitely noble. I also do believe it can be argued he's a hero at what cost, given the context of war as a whole. Honestly, there's so many different arguments you could make within that. But yes, that is where Forrest is in life. He's gone through the traumatic experience of live combat and still seems pretty grounded within himself. And in this exact moment, we don't know his next moves. He was planning on going into the shrimp business with Bubba, but Bubba has passed. Forrest still seems to have his head on straight and looks as promising as ever. Ginny is exploring different ways of life right now, being a part of protests, just traveling and questioning the way the world and society operates. But we see that even though things seem pretty on the surface, all is not well, because Ginny has found herself with an man. And unfortunately, all we can do in this moment is hope or pray, whatever works for you, that Ginny one day knows and believes she's worth more than to be treated like that. Now, the next time we're able to see what both Forrest and Ginny are up to is during New Year's. Forrest, once again, is just getting by doing what he loves to do, and through the military special services, found himself representing the country on an all-American ping pong team, and he's brought on a talk show to discuss his experience. As he's leaving the studio, he is confronted by none other than Lieutenant Dan, who is quite flabbergasted at the fact that Forrest won a Medal of Honor. They spend some time talking and catching up, and it doesn't take Forrest long to sense this deep void and state of anger and depression that Lieutenant Dan is in. I mean, he was in it the last time he saw him. And with that, Forrest decides to keep him company for Christmas and New Year's. As they're sitting at the bar on New Year's Eve, Forrest starts to wonder about Ginny, wondering where she is and how she's doing. And Ginny is not well. We're taken into her world, and we see that once again, she is on the run. Quickly packing a bag, seems to have animosity for whoever that is passed out in the bed, and we see why when she looks into the mirror, and it is clear that she has been punched in the face. The 10-second countdown begins as she's walking out, and it's pretty clear there's no New Year's excitement here. This is a woman that doesn't have time to celebrate New Year's. This is a woman that's in survival mode, and unfortunately, there's no joy to be found right now. So, as time goes on, Forrest is finally discharged from the military. When he returns to Alabama, we see that his ping pong playing has garnered him quite the attention, as his home is filled with Gump merchandise. His mother, being the businesswoman that she is, recommend Forrest take a sponsorship opportunity from a ping pong company offering $25,000. With his mother's approval, he feels comfortable telling a little white lie about using the product when he really doesn't. Which, yeah, in this day and age, this is happening with influencers on every social media app that exists. Forrest goes on to use that money to buy a shrimping boat and start the business he promised he would run with Bubba. Now, initially, he has trouble actually catching anything, and an old-timer recommends he name his boat for good luck. And of course, he names his boat Jenny. This is when we're opened up to where Ginny is in life, and once again, she is not doing well. We see that now she is in a place of chasing extremely detrimental temporary fixes. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not a crime to go clubbing, have a little drink or two, a little edible, and just have a good time with your friends. But Miss Jenny has found herself surrounded by some very hard. I mean, we got in the mix. So this isn't just fun nights out anymore. We see what is assumed to be her partner and falling back onto the bed. And Jenny is just sitting there, high as a kite, looking very much in a dark night of the soul state of being. She goes out onto the balcony and finds herself standing on the ledge, most likely reminiscing on her prayer to God of dreaming a bird that can fly away. She stands there for a moment, seeming mesmerized by the ground below, and almost maybe even determined. But her foot slips, and in just a fraction of a second, she is brought back into this dense 3D reality. She slowly gets off the ledge and sits on a chair on the balcony, crying and rocking back and forth in an attempt to pacify herself. Now, I'm gonna go a little deep for a second. Personally speaking, I believe that heaven and hell are not places you go to once you leave this earth. I believe that they are states of mind, frequencies you operate in, and dark spaces intentionally created here on Earth. That's why some people wake up with barely any material possessions, go to hard-working jobs, yet still find joy and gratitude every day because they choose to find it. Now, I'll use myself for example. I noticed a lot of feelings of anxiety and overwhelm in my teenage years. And because I didn't know how to manage it, it became my reality. I owned anxiety. I wore it as an identity and did that for half of my life. Because yes, even though it was a heavy feeling, because I had went so long believing I couldn't grow out of it, it was now who I was. I'm now in a place in my life of understanding that it's just a feeling, an emotion that can come and go like any other and can be properly regulated and managed. It's not me. And we see that Jenny has found herself in quite a dark place, finding herself again and again with partners that don't seem to have the best things going on, numbing out with hard, and just so clearly not centered within herself. This is a hurt girl that is harboring a lot of pain inside of her and doesn't know how to face it and manage it. She doesn't know what to do or where to go, thus living her hell on earth. And just like that, we have reached the end of part 1. Oh my gosh. If you have stuck around for this whole thing, thank you. I totally forgot whilst filming that this was going to be a 2-parter, so I didn't film a proper outro, hence this little voiceover thing I have going on. But yes, part 1 is wrapped. I am very pleased with how this video turned out, and I hope you are as well. So please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Feel free to comment below how you feel about the movie, things you see that I don't, because I think that's the beauty of art in itself. So many people looking at the same thing and seeing something different. So yes, this has been part 1. I hope you enjoyed. And yes, I'll see you in part 2. Hello and welcome to Feel Real Depth. Welcome in. Welcome in. And today we are looking at the there's this heartwarming nostalgic factor I have for the film. So there's this heartwarming nostalgic factor. But what I do know is that she was to plan and confront Forrest, and were pissed when they couldn't catch him. And he just took all that and like, come on, they took the time out of their day to plan to confront Forrest and were pissed when they couldn't catch him. And he just took all that energy. Why is that so hard to say? Like, come on. And all throughout this time, there are several different comments. And all throughout this time, and of course, the supportive friend that Forrest is. He makes a bus. And of course, the supportive friend that he was just watching his childhood friend live out what he was told. To Forrest, defending the one he... Now, due to Forrest's exceptional bravery in the war, he finds himself being... To Forrest, defending the ones he cares for seems to be... To Forrest, defending the ones he cares for seems to be a way he shows love. Okay, bruh. To Forrest, defending the ones he cares for seems... Alright.